figured out, friends. In a moment you may hear me singing, and I hope you'll see that Katia Palmeri is with me too for the Kingdom Within podcast. Oh, it doesn't seem like that's what's happened, yo. Oh, well, all right, so let's figure this one out. It says we're live. It just has a picture of me, though, which is not the intention. So, oh, here we go. Well, that's funny. Online, online, online. Well, it says we are online for all of them. And it says also that we should be able to actually, darling, we are both there. Yes, there, we are good. We are streaming live, and we can see the comments for all 3 platforms that we are streaming to, which is Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we are figuring things out, and when things come up, we just deal with it. So living, learning, growing. How are you, Katia?
Not too bad. I'm in the casual look today because I've been enveloped in our curriculum. So I've just been doing some consolidation of our work. I've been getting our illustrations done. So I've been really digging deep into that work. So it left me little time today. So I've just been like on one project into another project into another project. So yeah, so I've just been busy in that, and yeah, just dealing with life and with my family, and that's it. How about you?
Yeah, sometimes that's more than enough, and a lot of the same. And also writing a story about the legal fiction from a perspective that hasn't been told so far is what I understand it to have been told, which is actually by breaking down different definitions, so that instead of just passing over or skimming over a word that we don't fully understand or comprehend the meaning of, we actually go into it deeper, which I think is incredibly valuable given the times that we're living in. And so tonight, that actually kind of leads us into what we're going to be talking about with energy as the topic of this evening. So what I want to do is just kind of get a bit of a more professional start out to the podcast, since that's ultimately what these are meant to be. We kind of just turn them into conversations or summits. We are intuitive women. And so, you know, when you talk about life and you talk about how you are and you talk about where you are, it's like that's where our story starts, right where we are. So if we actually breathe ourselves back into this moment, then we realize that all time is always ever happening right now where we are. There's never a not moment that we're in except for when we're in our head and not in our heart. So we got to just start dropping ourselves back into our heart center, which has to do with the field of resonance, resilience, and respect, which is part of the inner formula. And so, yeah, I am going to just kind of open up our podcast, and yeah, I'm super excited to share with you what Katia has tonight, because she's put together quite an insightful presentation I look forward to adding in or adding on to. And we got Bella joining in tonight too.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Hi, Bella.
Hey, 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 Bella, how are you today? We cannot see your microphone, so I don't know if you got the option to speak, but if you don't, you're invited when you can. Oh, then let's get on to the podcast. All right. Bella, awesome to have you here. Please do comment in the chat where you're at, and if you've got anything you wanted to contribute, even if we can't see you. We can certainly see your comments and we appreciate hearing from you. Same thing applies on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn too. So if you comment, please do, because this is the first time I've used Restream and I'm quite excited to know whether it's working the way that it's supposed to. So I would very much appreciate that input on your behalf. And so here we go. Hey, 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 Laura J and Katia Palmeri here today for another episode of The Kingdom Within, this time focused on energy. It is the pinnacle experience of the hierarchy of creation, because if we take God out of the box, we see that God is all, which means he is the box, or she, or it, or whatever you describe the energy to be. It's the box, it's outside of the box, it's inside of the box. If it's all, then there isn't anything that it isn't. And so to take God out of the box is simply to say, hey, if we drop the walls, we just keep the foundation strong. And then that's how we actually build bridges to be able to connect and care for one another in common unity, in community. And that's part of what these episodes are all about, to dive inward in a comfortable and committed space with guides who have been there, done that, and are still doing it, because none of us ever get there. And we're honest enough to say, yo, not at the top of the mountain, but I've been just the top of a few cool ones. And yeah, the climb up is a bitch and getting down is hard too. So welcome to life. Katia, how would you like to start your presentation into the realm of energy for tonight's episode of The Kingdom Within?
So I'll just do like a brief little intro on it. And then I've shared with you a slideshow kind of presentation, which I will cue you when you can start that up. Okay. So it's just more of a little intro in the beginning, and then we can have a look at that little presentation. So really, I'm really excited to be speaking about energy tonight. I'm an advocate about shifting the paradigm of our current education system into a new paradigm of education, in that what I saw missing just from my own experience of being in the education system and then having my 3 daughters through it. The major missing for me is the study of who we are really to begin with, and how we operate, and really getting in tune with that first. So I call it self-knowledge education. And part of the self-knowledge education is understanding what we are. So it's this idea about we're energy beings first. And so what I've always thought of is, if we're not associating ourselves in a conversation in education around being energy beings, then I've always wondered, how are we even operating at this point? almost like a baffling little, question of like, how did we make it this far? But it's like, one of the greatest things that I've learned myself is the laws, the principles. There's various things that are in operation within every system, every living thing. And so that's what got me really excited in finding out more about energy. And so I'm just going to first share just a little thing that I wrote that kind of summarizes the energy talk before we get into the slides. So everything in the universe is energy. Pure consciousness, life force, source energy permeates everything. When life is created, it pops into existence from a formless state into a form. And then when life ends, it returns from form into a formless state again. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or transformed from one form to another. So one of the things that we experience as human beings is energy translates into a beingness. So for example, we can have a beingness that represents fear, malevolence, hate, jealousy, and greed, or it can be love, kindness, benevolence, forgiveness. And these are all various levels of energy playing out within us as a being. So everything, including human beings, are a unique expression of this energy. And we are actually vehicles and instruments that this energy uses to experience itself. So the big question is, do we allow this pure consciousness, source energy to flow out of us uninterrupted and at its highest potential? Or do we get in the way and suppress this incredible power within us? So consider that suppression leads to depression. So if we're looking at what's happening today, and many people are experiencing all kinds of different expressions of energy right now. But if we look at depression, we have to see, where does that stem from? Where could depression stem from? So a suppression of our authentic self-expression and our personal truth can lead to depression, unhappiness, and an overall lack of well-being. So the figure of Jesus, he represents Christ consciousness. He was actually an example of what is possible for every human being when you allow pure consciousness to radiate from the heart. And one of his best teachings that directly relates to this is when he says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forward will destroy you, which is hugely profound. Like that was a powerful quote for me, but I actually started to relate to it even more powerfully when I related it to the energy that we have within us. And I look at it like, if you're suppressing in any way, from keeping from saying what you want to say, or incompletions, like you're not completing in relationships, you're not being your full authentic expression, you're holding back. Any type of holding back is going to, it's like that suppression is going to lead to some form of depression where there's a disempowerment potentially. So it's amazing. Again, what was that?
I just wanted to, I apologize for interrupting. I wanted to just,
yeah, no.
That in the moment you were talking about this, Dave moved. And welcome, gentlemen. It's awesome to have each of you here tonight. Thank you for joining in, and
thank you.
I really look forward to your contributions too. Right in that moment, Katia, Dave moved, and the Buddha-esque statue or figurine came into view in that moment. And last week, I believe it was, you had shared the story of the Golden Buddha and the nature of that is golden of ours that is hidden over, because sometimes we want to protect ourselves. And it's like, in that community, the people knew that their village was going to be raided, and so they covered the Golden Buddha with debris that seemed worthless, so nobody stole the statue, but everybody was killed. So nobody remembered that it was covered with things, and they just thought it was a worthless clay statue. So then one day they wanted to move it from up in the mountains down, and then it's like they tried to lift it, and then like the crane snapped and it fell down, and then because of that, they found that there was a glint of gold underneath, and then they discovered there was more of it. And I did want to also just mention, have you ever heard about the helium balloon theory, of the whole notion of what is suppressed, compressed, repressed, depressed, all of these energies in motion that are in reversal onto themselves are kind of like the equivalent of a helium balloon that's suppressed and submerged underwater. It's like, sure, you can get it there, but then you've got to keep your energy fixated on it or around it in order to make sure that it doesn't rise in an inopportune moment. And inopportunely, in the moment when we get excited and distracted by something that's meaningful that calls our attention, suddenly the splash comes up, the helium balloon erupts, and now suddenly we're dealing with the splash plus the helium balloon is now exposed. WTF are we going to do? And then it kind of goes back to those feelings of not enoughness or too muchness that really make us feel like we need to work harder to keep those parts of ourselves repressed, even though it's gold when we actually get the experience all the way to the quarry station.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I get, even just from my own experience, anytime that I've experienced an unrestrained type of being, you can feel the energy behind it. Like it's just like a lightness, even a power to it. Actually, there's a power to it. And so if we're really paying attention to what goes on every day, and how we're experiencing life, and pay attention to those energies, we can actually, you know, get even more clear on, what is our mindset at that time? What's the things that are triggering our energy to, be one time, high and light, or heavy and low. So it's just, that's why I thought it would be an interesting topic to bring forward, because it's like, once we're aware of energy and how it plays out within us, we're then able to take more measures on being in that awareness and have more control over it. So the one thing that I've always been amazed at as well, and I've mentioned this earlier, is that I just still am amazed that we don't have this in the schools, where children are being taught, like, we are energy and that we are alchemists. How amazing would that be for kids to learn? Like, you can create magic, and you've got the ability to, alter energy. And so we have the ability to really affect energy within us and outside of us. And we can create empowerment or disempowerment by choosing higher or lower vibrations of energy. So I just really wanted to bring that into the conversation tonight. And I thought I'd bring in some visuals with my slideshow presentation, so that it's not so much the talk, but we have some visuals to go along with it. So I don't know if that's something you're able to pull up now, or.
What was I going to say? Is it showing up? Can you see it? You can see it? Oh, source code.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I was going to add in something, and it's lost. So carry on.
So I've just pulled a little bit of a segment out of our curriculum that we've been building. We've got a curriculum coming out. I'm really excited about it, because I've been an advocate for a number of years in transforming the education curriculum. And so I'm heading a curriculum that's about self-knowledge. So it's all about who we are, how we operate, and what our life is for. So this is a segment out of the study of energy that we created, and it's what are we? So the next slide says that, let me just minimize this. Everything is energy. Just like everyone's probably heard these two amazing quotes. What we've called matter is energy, whose vibration has been lowered as to be perceptible to these senses. Albert Einstein. Nikola Tesla, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The next slide is what is energy? And
before we go there, it's just recognizing the universe, right? It's literally the one song, the universe. It's like we're all part of, like, he's supposed to save us while we're supposed to worship him, which is an HYMN instead of the HIM that we think that it is, because it's like, if we're in the one song, then him is vibration, and that is how we harmonize humanity with the extra E. So what is energy, Katia?
What is energy? So it's waves of vibration that range from low to high frequencies. So the longer the wave, the slower and denser the wave is, the frequency is, the lower the frequency. And the shorter the wavelength, the faster and lighter and higher the frequency is. Mm-hmm. So these play out, like I said, within our being. So there's times where we're feeling depressed, so it's a slower, longer, denser wave. If we're feeling joy and bliss, that's going to be related to a faster, shorter, lighter wave, which is a higher frequency.
It's also connected to the chakras as well, because the low frequency is in red because those are the densest energies of color, which is the sacral chakra, or the sacral chakra is orange, which is above the root chakra, which is our sense of belonging in this world, and that's red. And then orange, and then the solar plexus is your yellow, and then the heart is like a green and pink, and then your throat is a blue, your third eye is your intuition, that's purple, and then the crown is white, and that's our sense of divine connection. And then the halo, or the corona, around an enlightened son or daughter that has actually expanded their radiance of their crown chakra. All of that comes when we are in alignment with a higher frequency, which I just want to add in, and I'm not sure how it specifically fits just yet, about our emotions being different from states of being. Because when we are present, we are in the state of contentment upwards, compared to when we are in a state of emotion or energy in motion, which is boredom and downwards, which is why the devil's playground or idle hands is the expression, because at boredom, we are then vulnerable to the devices that might come in to lower our frequency, because low can only feed off of high. So there's an energy vampirism that is something that I just wanted to bring in the reminder of. And then also just to say about our states of emotion and our states of being are different, because it's based on our level of presence in the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation. Absolutely. And even deeper behind the being, which Laura already knows, is that context plays a huge factor in regards to how energy plays out as well in us. So if we're coming from a diminishment context and not a good enough context, we have a tendency then to be acting out of fear and the lower vibration emotions, versus coming from the invincible and I can take on anything, and we're able to raise the energy from there. So the next slide is going to be speaking to the 6 forms of energy, and each of the letters of these 6 forms of energy create scream. So the first one is sound energy, which is produced when an object is made to vibrate. Sound energy travels out as waves in all directions. Sound needs a medium to travel through, such as air, water, wood, and even metal. So an example of sound energy is voices, whistles, horns, musical instruments. Chemical energy is really a form of potential energy, and is the energy stored in food, gasoline, or chemical combinations. And examples of chemical energy is striking a match, combining vinegar with baking soda to form CO2 gas, and breaking light sticks. It releases chemical energy. The third one is radiant energy, and it's a combination of heat and light energy. Light energy, like sound energy, travels out in all directions in waves. So an example of the radiant energy is a light bulb, the glowing coils on a toaster, the sun, and headlights on cars. The fourth energy is electrical energy, and this is energy produced by electrons moving through a substance, is known as electric energy. So we mostly see electric energy in batteries and from outlets in our homes. So electric energy lights our homes, runs motors, and makes our TVs and radios work. And again, examples are CD players, TVs, and video games. Atomic energy is produced when you split atoms, and it's a tremendous amount of energy that's released when this happens. And of course, the example is an atomic bomb, nuclear power plants, nuclear submarines, and the sun. And finally, mechanical energy is moving energy, and it's the form that we most see around us. All moving objects produce mechanical energy, and the movements within machines is also mechanical energy. And the example is, of course, people, rolling bicycle, moving gears, and a running car. So I just felt like that was kind of important to just bring to light again, not something that's really commonly talked to, but these are happening all around us all the time. And it's important to note what types of energy are around us. And then, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add in that with sound energy, when you mentioned about the scream, when I was locked up in the mental institution for 2.5 weeks, there was this one woman. She was a mother. She was getting electroshock therapy. She'd been in really dark and bad emotional places and didn't have the emotional support to be able to deal with it. And so basically she'd been checked into the mental hospital because she couldn't deal with life and needed a break. And so was in there. And there was one day when we were in the cafeteria. And while I was there, I basically just decided that I was going to sprinkle magic on everybody that was in my midst. And I was going to have magic sprinkled on me. And God knows that I could use it in there and everybody else could too. So anyway, I engaged with everyone and the experience in there was pretty magical. But the reason I bring it up is because this woman is one day sitting there with a nurse and she's just like holding her head. And like we hold our head when it hurts, you know what I mean? Like we hold our heart when it hurts. We hold our stomach when we get kicked in the gut because somebody just like hit our power center and we leak self-esteem when they hit us in the solar plexus, right? And she's holding her head and she's just like, oh God, I could just scream. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And she's like, I can't do that. And I was like, okay, you go grab a pillow and I'll go grab this little hymn book that I had been given from this man that maybe needed to be in the institution, in fairness, because of the details that he told me and just how crazy it was. But at the same time, he gave me this hymn book where I asked him if I could borrow it. And so I went outside with this nurse, and one of the songs in it were the 4 verses of Canada, of O Canada, which we're used to the one, there's 4, which is a story for another time. But basically, this nurse and I stood out in the courtyard that was fenced in because we were, caged, institutionalized animals, really. And but we were very civilized. She screamed into the pillow while we sang "O Canada" at the top of our lungs, just to give her the sense of support. And it was the most healing and just exceptional experience. And she felt so much better because she released the energy. And it's just like in Las Vegas one time, I met this homeless woman named Linda, and we had a profound experience in a flower bed for like 2 hours one time. And it included like her beating her fists and her feet on the ground and screaming and letting things out after having been abused for 20 years by the man who had died 3 months before. And suddenly he'd not only abused her while he was alive, he'd taken her identity when he died because no longer was she his victim. And now who was she in this world, right? And so she prayed for a miracle. I showed up and we had this experience where she screamed in the garden. And it was such a profound experience. Maybe for her, I suspect so, but for myself too. And it's like both of these screaming incidents were totally uncivilized, but also completely the most civilized thing that could be done, in that I held space for women that needed to be expressed so that it was not compressed. And when we allow for each other's expansion instead of nipping at one another, which so oftentimes we do when we're stealing power. Oh, what I was going to say earlier was actually about the vampiric nature of energy being whether we're getting direct from source or whether we're getting from others. Because that's got a huge difference, whether we feel like there's unlimited supply because we're getting it direct or whether we're getting it from someone else. And so we need to control them to make sure we get our fix. It's like the Bug's Life scene, where the grasshoppers are saying like, oh, let's just hang out here. And Hopper, like the, grasshopper comes in and says, it's just, what, like, we can stay here, sure, as he's kind of just like seeding the idea of what they want him to say. And then he comes out and says like, what about that one ant that stood up? And then they're just like, oh, it's just one puny little ant. And then he's like, throws a grain at them, and then he smashes down the lid and it buries them. And then he walks on top and it says, just one can change everything. They all just need to remember that we're so much stronger together. So energy, when the momentum and force then magnify and magnetize towards one another, magic takes place. So I feel like that was rambling, but I feel like it was cohesive. So
No, not at all. Was not rambling at all. Actually, I love that. Because it's actually one of the reasons why I think I'm so excited about when I learned about energy, was because I actually came from a strict family where we weren't able to really express ourselves. And in finding out about, how energy works and how important it is to express ourselves. This is why I'm such an advocate for bringing this forward, because it will make such a considerable difference in, the type of leaders we're building in the future. And I just see how much of a difference it will make in regards to mindset, performance, leadership, and all of that. So just based on my own experience, I can relate definitely to the times where I've been suppressed and how I felt. And then now, as I'm starting to take on my voice and starting to get out there, I've just noticed a tremendous difference in how that's helped me. So I want to help others with this information.
well, that's what we get to the point of within the hero's journey, or the sacred sojourn of the soul, which is my soulful adaptation of the hero's journey. It's like contribution is the pinnacle experience before then we find ourselves back where we started, knowing it for the first time, because that's home, which becomes the comfort zone of the known. But then even that can become a rut if we don't keep moving forward and keep our eyes focused. And I want to just put this out here, this idea, because I think it's so brilliant, that inspiration and expiration and aspiration are all connected, because we need to be inspired to aspire before we expire. But it doesn't need to necessarily be in that order. But at the same time, if we start looking at our life from the contribution spectrum, it's like asking ourselves, who am I? Yes, it matters, but why does it matter? Like, we have to get back fundamentally to a sense of worthiness within our own selves, not just the selves of our self-image, which image is actually the I magi, or the I mage, because we are magicians and we are magic people that can ride the magic of the moment if we're fully present where we are now, or we can lose our power by giving it to something outside of ourselves. The dog jumps in the picture in that moment, stealing attention. Just coincidental, or is it, right? Like, we can look at life as if nothing's a miracle, or as if everything is a miracle, and it's ultimately going to have a huge impact on the inspiration, aspiration, expiration experience.
Yep. I love it. Anyone else want to contribute?
Yeah. And don't feel forced to, but certainly your contributions are welcome if you do feel called. So you can unmute and then we'll know. We appreciate the conscious connection element to the way that we run these meetings. So we appreciate the respect. We also respect your time for showing up, your energy, effort, your attention. We're not asking for money, but that's the team that I say are the energetic resources we're playing with in life. So it's like, be very mindful that everything is it requires an investment of your time, energy, effort, attention, and money. So really just being clear, is that spending energy or the energetic resources that are in your team, or is that investing your energetic resources? And being really clear about spending, done and it's over, but investing, you get a return on investment. So just really being clear, obviously this experience is intended intentionally to uplift and fuel you and to fill your hearts with light so that you can carry on into your life, into the week ahead, and be a blessing, which you already are. And ultimately, as a lighthouse, knowing that there are other lighthouses in the world that are doing great things, that are loving on people without expectation, you know, it's really good karma, and it's good juju, and it feels great. And that just helps us stay stronger, I believe, when we see as much madness, insanity, and cruelty in the world, which, you know, if we don't face it, then it too then becomes like that emotion that, you know, was just like the helium balloon that's going to splash up. And right now we're getting a lot of splashes because there's been a lot of really nasty negative things that have been going on behind the scenes. And so as all of that comes to the surface, we really need to know who each other are and how to support one another, who are going to have so many turning to us to support them through their disillusionment that comes with waking up from the matrix, which is part of why these meetings are so important and why we appreciate your showing up. Because whether you say something on the call live or not, your energy is present. And that means that your essence is influencing the experience and the one who watches you, because they feel you. And so that's how we truly are connected.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, love it.
So maybe we'll go back to the presentation and get through, and then we can get into a deeper conversation, but I'll just finish a little bit through that and then open it up.
Okay, perfect. All right, so you were up to the energy transference part.
So I mentioned that energy transforms. So energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. And water is the perfect example. It can go from a solid to a liquid to a gas.
Absolutely.
Quantum science has now proven through its technology that at the smallest particle now, they've realize there's a quantum unified field. Everything emerges from and returns to this fundamental field of information and energy that connects us all. And a lot of new studies have come out. Actually, old religions have talked about this, thousands of years have talked into this, and now they're actually proving it in science. So it's exciting because, again, when we understand energy and how it works, we're then able to be in control, and we're not so easily able to be triggered out in the world. So this knowledge is highly important. And like I said, I'd like to see this in elementary school.
Yeah.
So the next slide, I've just created.
Before we go there, can we just also acknowledge that the center point that this light radiates from is in the heart, not the head. So like we have to I just wanted to point out before we moved on that this literally, and I find it so symbolic, Dave, that your hands are on your head in that moment, because literally we have been taught to fixate on the head when what we need to do is recognize that it is the heart that is the magnetic center point of the toroidal field of our own energy centers that run up through the chakras and out and down and up back through us as if we were the center of the core of an apple. And then it runs, and we have huge magnetic force fields of energy around us, like infinity signs that run up through our energy center and around and back down. And so we're so much more magical. But when we try to think about the center point, it's not going to be up here. Like that's what we need to drop, because the 18-inch gap that is hardest for us to maneuver in life is out of the head and back into the heart where we started. And that was where the fall truly came from, because by eating from the true tree of knowledge, we fell from the tree of life, or we lost access to it in the same way. I don't know the biblical story or the reference where all of those details specifically go, but what I know is that there are said to be two trees, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. And by eating from the tree of knowledge, we lost touch with the fact that the heartbeat, like, it very much is symbolic for the way that we need to recognize life is going to be for us all, which means flatlining is not what we're into. Like, we want the ups and the downs. We need all of it because all of it makes us who we are. So I just wanted to mention that it is the heart where that field comes from. And then we also just have to recognize how I was saying, Katia, before this, it's just like how we build up heart walls. And then it's just like, you know, we encounter people we love with heart walls. And it's like, hey, I see you. I see you in there. I'm just going to keep loving on you until you're open to it. But I see you behind your wall, darling, and you're loved, you know? And it's just like, we really need someone to love us behind the heart walls. And we also need to figure out how to take some of those heart walls down, because those heart walls have served us until we knew how to protect ourselves in a way that we didn't before. And so now we don't need the walls so much, because now we recognize our words can become the sacred swords that actually set us free when we break through the pandemic and take back our power with the pen. Until then, no, I'm just kidding. I'll let you get back to the next section there.
Well, just add to what you just said there. I was just going to say, it's like when you notice, I'm thinking about it as you said it for myself as an example. Like, I've noticed when I'm protecting myself and the wall is up, and I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. So like, let's say you just get up in the morning and you just notice that something's off. And then you're going about your day and you're interacting with people, and somehow everyone is kind of sensing the energy, and it's like everyone's kind of negative. I don't know if anyone's ever had that happen. So it's like everyone you bumped into is like, and you're getting more triggered because it's like, and then there's another time where I've waken up and I felt like I'm on top of the world and everything is literally clicking. So I'm like, this person's, I've engaged them, and then like we had the best, 2-minute conversation, and like things are running smoothly. And it's just like, I've just realized that how incredible it is when, how important it is to realize our energy has such an effect outside of us that it can alter every relationship. It can alter how cars are driving, and like, it's just incredible. So that's what I get excited about when we get into this topic, is just the immense power we have. And we're only at the cusp of what that looks like. This is all just starting to become uncovered, and yeah, it's exciting.
Well, before we went live earlier this afternoon, we were actually talking about a topic that you can't readily talk about without being censored, which is the wavelength technology that has microwaves connected to it, and we have to figure out how to discuss some of these topics, because what is not being talked about but needs to be is the auric field, and how external energies can imprint, impress, impact the auric field, which is essentially like an energy bubble that keeps us in integrity within our own selves. So it's like, if I know what my bubble is full of, me, then I am not going to be leaking me out, and I'm not going to be leaking others in. And so it's easier when we're clear about our own energy field. But when the energy field gets penetrated because of impurities, which are thought patterns that can pierce through the energy field of you, then we become open to those gouges, and we also become targets for vampires energetically that need to steal energy from us because they've cut off of their direct source connection, and so then they see you as one to be able to feed off of. And if you don't know how to actually protect your energy field, then you're an open target. And so narcissism, I think that there's a lot to that actually simply being a behavior pattern that has been commoditized through the DSMs. That's a alternative and controversial perspective, but it's nothing new from my to hear from me. But truly, I think that narcissism in itself, being about the self, is not a bad thing until until it's made toxic. Like, selfish simply means being about ourselves. To then be selfish at the expense of another is very different. That's like confidence and conceit is an example that I often use, because it's like, I'm very confident, which confidence is situational, and I'm not confident all the time. There are situations where I feel very uncomfortable, uneasy, insecure in. So I'm not perfect by any means. But there's confidence, and then there's conceit, which is showing up. And it's just like, I'm confident to know that when I walk into a room, I have value to offer, and I'll speak when I have something to say, and I'll hold space when that's a more important activity to be doing. It's like, I know my value when I walk into a room, which is confidence. But conceit is walking into that room and needing to dominate the space, or to attract attention, or to somehow steal energy, which attention stealing, that is a form of energy vampirism on a more subtle or acute level. But nonetheless, it's an energy steal, because it's like, if we're conceited, we walk into the room and it's just like, hey, look at me, I'm so amazing. And everyone else is just chopped liver, which it doesn't fly, because it's just not the way it is.
I could speak to this a little bit. A real narcissism as a disease actually ties into genes that were not activated in the child during formative years. Our genes are turned on and off from signals from the environment. And children who are not attended to by their parents, specifically the mother, a child, yeah, somewhat entirely needy, but for developmental purposes. And if the infant isn't shown attention at key formative times, those genes that create the neural pathways of empathy, reciprocity, object constancy, stuff like that, the brain doesn't form correctly. So like narcissism that you see as a disease is something quite different than narcissistic traits, because you mentioned, we all have ego. Ego is a program that, when it's functioning well, protects us. When it's not functioning well, it causes a lot of problems. So I don't know if I have a conclusion there, but yeah, narcissism as when we see it as a real disease, as when it comes up pretty often. Like a good example would be politicians, where they really feed on that attention because there's something lacking inside. That's not something that is just philosophical. That's actual neurological changes in the brain that were caused at a young age. I don't know if that can be undone. A lot of people believe it's possible, perhaps through plant medicine and extreme work, but I suspect the best place for people like that is to become a monk and become devoted to God and let God fill the hole. That there's not another person's not really going to be able to fill that space very well.
Well, we have to stop looking at one man or woman rather than a person specifically, since that's the interface for the government. And I just only bring in the language distinction, because if we don't clarify it, when it's spoken, then those who are new to it don't remember it, and those who do hear it, you know, we know that a person is not a man or a woman. But if we're looking at one man or a woman to complete us, or to, you know, give us everything that we need to meet all of our needs, it's entirely unrealistic. Like, a partner to be your best friend, your, you know, partner, your co-parent, your co-pilot in life, your travel companion, you know, your exercise buddy, your lover, your, you know, cooker, your cleaner, like whatever, like everything that we expect of our partner, like that's one other being who's having their own life experience that we have all of these unmet needs to be fulfilled by. When it's just like, what if we actually realize that we're all fragmented and we need a lot of different parts of ourselves to call back to ourselves in order to be complete, and we can't just expect to get it from one person, because then we're going to be like a vampire going to feed off of what has become a corpse because we sucked them dry and they had nothing left to give. And it's just like, we have to really start talking about energy vampirism from a real way, without it sounding crazy. And, you know, when I was locked up, I was saying to family, like it's like the witch, like your daughter's like she's the biggest witch of them all. Like, I meant she magical, gifted, you know, that wasn't appreciated. Like, there's like the system's vampiric, like these things, like talking about vampires and witches made me sound like off my rocker and like living in a alternative dimension, which is what psychosis is. If we're actually looking at the reality that we're experiencing and the reality that we're now aware of are now coexisting simultaneously, and we're of neither, but we're in both. And it's just a really strange experience to go through, especially as a collective. We're doing it. Like right now, we've got competing timelines, we've got competing storylines, we've got all of these groups that are feeding off of its members. There are so many groups that are feeding off of members energetically. When you pray, you become prey to those who come down the spine of the pineal tree, this pine tree at Christmas, to receive the gifts of energy that are placed underneath of it. And we don't think that there's, you know, more to the story. Of course we do, because like we're investing our energetic resources to be here in a call like this. But there are some that would say, oh, but no, I was not told that by this one particular book, which was written by, you know, the only book written by man, or by God. But it's just like, I'm sorry, everything was filtered through the hand of man or woman. Everything filtered itself through manifestation, man-infestation, or will of manifestation. Like, we're manifested beings that are individuated expressions of the grand overall designer, 100% organic, meant to be natural men and women here to share our seed with the world, realizing that the seeds are the thoughts that we think. As a man thinketh, so is he. James Allen. Like, we have to look at how our words are wands and we're casting spells. That's why they're written. And then we sign in cursive writing, because it's the curse I've placed on myself to think a certain way that may not serve us. And so then when we find a contract is not offered all of the details up front, we find it to be null and void, and therefore writable, right? If we're not fully informed of the agreement, it's like Santa Claus. Well, when the suit overtook him before he read the fine print, that contract is null and void because he was never told it was an eternal thing. He's not bound by it. If you're not told it's a forever binding agreement, then you're not bound to it, right? Did you want to get back to all is one and one is all?
Let's get back to that quickly.
Here you go.
So where I left off was so the quantum unified field is this energy that everything pops into existence and then returns back into. And so if we look at it like this, where source energy is this 100% whole and complete in integrity energy, and it consists of positive, neutral, negative energy all in one. We say that everything is energy, it's indestructible, it's infinite. This is the all. The next slide then shows, as of the Big Bang, the whole became part. So there was part source, this light universe. And we say consciousness is the neutrality, it's the zero, and energy is positive and negative. It's the polarity that shows up, and we are able to experience joy and sadness, anger and bliss. And so it allows for the ability to express and experience emotions. So this whole energy became part, and it became parts as universe, galaxy, planet, human, organ, cells, quarks, which are right now the tiniest particles that they're finding. So you can see how it's manifested into these part energy. The next one is, it takes me into E = mc squared, the famous formula. So it's showing that energy, which is the invisible world energy, equals matter. And it shows up as a sun, as a mountain, as a bird. So this is energy at play. So we have energy that's invisible and energy that's visible. We are all energy. In fact, there was a study that I found where they were talking about how do we measure energy in people. And someone actually did a study where they measured that potentially we have 7 septillion joules of energy inside of us. And why do they say that? Well, there's 100 trillion atoms, and there's a nucleus in the atom. So if you look at what we're made of, which is this incredible energy, but the energy is so condensed, they say that an atom has the same power as a nuclear bomb. So if we looked at ourselves as these amazing energy beings, and that we have this energy that has been limited, let's say, in use, and because we haven't really talked much into this area until more recently, that we're just in the tip of understanding just what this energy can do in the world. So if we start looking at self-knowledge education and really getting into a deep inquiry and tapping into that inner wisdom, that is where the energy can then be, I believe, can be released and be utilized. So energy also shows up as our soul code, which is a unique energy signature that each of us has. And people have defined it as also have said it could be like divine spark, our essence, our self-expression, but each of us has this unique energy signature. And in a world where we're born into this compliance and trying to be the same because we don't want to be, putting ourselves at risk by potentially, not being liked or being rejected. And we kind of suppress this unique energy signature that we have. That's that kind of suppression I was talking about earlier that has us feel diminished. It has us feel depressed. So it's really tapping into that essence of what we are and who we are, and having that expressed to its potential. And that's where real, I think, true freedom comes from. And the miracle is that when we look at the universal energy system, it's not a coincidence that human being ends up being right in the middle between this macro world and this micro world of energy being expressed at every level. And the reason I believe we are in the middle is because we're actually able to ask the question, who am I? And actually answer it. We are the source energy having an experience, which is miraculous when you think about it. So I just thought that was kind of neat that how human being ended up playing out right in between these macro and micro worlds. So I was looking at that even a little bit more in the next slide, where I talk to the whole versus the part. So this amazing whole source energy, pure conscious energy, if we were to turn it inside out, we would see that it's made up of these beautiful parts: sun, earth, human, ocean, particles. It's the parts that make up that whole. So it's as if the source energy is wanting to experience everything that it is. And that's what we're living into. Every one of us, every living thing is an expression of this source energy. And if we looked at it that way, wouldn't that change how we actually look at people and look at nature? And I just think that that's a phenomenal epiphany in regards to, having more an empathy and more understanding with other people, if we kind of looked at it this way. And then I did the next slide, which is in the same kind of respect. I just looked at it like, let's call our body the whole, and that every cell is the parts of that whole. And that you can tell, like, if we looked at it that way, that every cell is essential to the functioning of that body. And that's like we're all essential to this body we call humanity, this body that we call universe. And it just shows you just how much each of us plays a factor, and how each of us is important to that whole.
Absolutely.
The next one, what was that?
Before you go there, I just wanted to actually point out that human being in and of itself, if you look at the word hue, as I often say about the hue of the skin tone, right? That is one aspect of the man, which is why it is called a human being, because it is one aspect of the man, which is how they then create a joinder essentially between the supernatural and the natural realms. It's like between the seen and the unseen. It's just like, that's kind of the connection I was making when you were on this slide about the human being is just one aspect of the man or woman. And so when we don't know that, then we don't make the bridge, because we don't learn how to actually stay an organic original compared to being said to be part of something bigger that would actually reduce our own rights and limit us as the individuated expressions within the whole.
Something I wanted to point out, that our guts are full of bacteria, and actually there's more bacteria by count than there are human cells. So what does it really mean to be human? We're a symbiotic community. The human body is, and all mammalian bodies, and I think reptilian as well, are symbiotic communities of either a mammal or reptilian cells, and then bacterial cells. And that seems to be fairly pervasive on this planet. All 99% of plants require symbiosis with fungus in order to function in the roots. And there's a life form called lichen, which is bacteria on one side and fungus on the other, like a flake. So I don't think there are any beings, at least on this planet, that are anything less than a community of multiple organisms, which need to function harmoniously, or severe disease results.
Yes.
And all of humanity could probably be looked at as the same thing. And whether it's working well or not at this particular moment.
Well, what is disease but cellular disharmony or dis-ease within the vessel? And that's part of the insanity of this whole con video game. It's just like, I noticed it right away because of how I pay attention to language, how disease and virus were being used interchangeably right off the hop. And that is not scientifically correct in any way, I don't believe. Pretty sure a virus is not just automatically made to be a disease. except for like the pandemic became or was always designed to be an endemic, which means that it's a crisis that just doesn't go away and that affects enough of the population for it to just stay. That's what an endemic is, which is now what we've migrated into. But that was always the intention too. So yeah, I absolutely agree with what you just said, Bella, in terms of it. We are communities into and onto ourselves. And it kind of goes back to that whole notion of I may stand before you as one, but I come before you as the combination of all those who came before me too. Because while you're talking about all of the micro aspects of my cellular micro, I can't even say it. Micrism,
Microbiome.
something like that. No, I can't even think of the word. You know how when you're,
Microorganism?
yeah, I think that was, yeah.
Microcosm. Is that the one?
Whatever the micro was that we needed to add to the madness, yes. But we're the microcosm of the macrocosm. It's just like that wasn't what I was going for expressly, but it is true in that what's going on in here is also going on out there. And if we're at conflict within ourselves, CELLS, we're going to have an issue with our self-image, with the SELF as to how we define ourselves in the world. And then that's going to impact our ability to I-mage or be the mage or magician of our own world based on the reality that we see for ourselves, based on the image or the I-mage that we speak into existence, because what you act as if you become. What you act as if you are, you become.
As above, so below.
Mhm.
And reverse.
Yeah, exactly. So another amazing session. I know there's a few more slides there, but was there anything specifically that you just wanted to kind of round out? Or do you feel like we need to go through all of them?
I'm just trying to see if I can summarize. So basically, what I guess the main thing to get across is in understanding how we work and function, which is what has been kept back purposely. Therefore, they can create these narratives where, people are just making decisions off the cuff because they haven't done the research and they don't really know how they operate. So they're taking authorities' opinions and medical authority opinions. So it's like if we learned about how we operate, especially at an energy level, we'll be able to take more responsibility for our lives. So we'll be able to take the responsibility to optimize our energy. But it's only if we understand how energy works that we'll be able to do that. So we can be, victims of our circumstances, especially today with what's going on. It's really a big play on our well-being, basically playing even on the fear of death really at play right now. But I just get a sense for more conversations around energy and, how energy relates to even our words that we speak, how important that is. Like, I just feel like there's so much being thrown out there today. And I don't know if anyone really holds their words sacred, because every single word that's uttered is carrying out a vibration of energy right now. And if we could just see the energy right now out in that world, we would see, I think, a huge confusion of a big mess of I don't even know, dark energies. And so it's like, this is really just a fundamental topic and an important thing for, I think, everyone to be kind of involved in as we go through these interesting transitional times. To be empowered instead of feeling, like we can be sucked and be disempowered in these situations. Yeah. I think this topic can actually keep us empowered through these challenging times.
Yeah, well, and it calls to mind the concert that I will let remain anonymous in terms of who it was, but where there was a feeding off of the energies of the people and sacrifices were made to the gods of whatever entities were opened up with the portals that were activated by the destructive frequencies that were being emitted from what is now being or becoming sound weaponry upon the masses, that's not being discussed, and it's actively not being discussed until ones like us are willing to. So I'm very grateful to be here with each of you, to be having this conversation, to be really feeling into what's ours, and to also be noticing what's not ours that has been being projected onto us, that maybe we can just say, ha, and breathe ourselves back present again, and just let that weight just move, because it doesn't need to come with you. So if you just need to just move your energy and literally call in the light, like sweeping, doing energy sweep of your field, moves energy. Like you saw the light shift when I started moving my space, right? You're as powerful as that too. It's not me being powerful. That's just like, whew, that worked. Like that was good. That was something that moved. So you can use that too. And then, you know, when you are feeling heavy, it's like, is this mine? Can I let this go? Will I let this go? If not, why not? Why am I choosing to suffer? Or why am I choosing to punish myself? And then, you know, from that place, then we can gain greater compassion for ourselves. Because if we don't have compassion for ourselves, how can we have compassion for those that we don't know? And so that's how we really do what we're doing. Tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Dan the Christian Man and Ethan Lucas, myself, Katia, Bella, I'm not sure, Dave, you're welcome as well, and anyone else that wants to tune in for Breaking Down the Alphabet, but from a biblical perspective. So we're really going to be starting to break down the story of Jesus, because I believe he was a man that wanted you to remember that this you too can do, and even greater things too. So I don't believe that he would have appreciated his legacy being that he was the one and only. When what does that make each of us? Chopped liver? Like, I think we're pretty special. We're pretty magnificent, and we're pretty ordinary and super ordinary. And, you know, we're all kinds of weird and fabulous and crazy. And, you know, words can be used against us, or words can be repurposed to serve us. And we get to choose how we're going to relate to those, and how we're going to relate to the ones that are issuing those words at us, or to us, or with us. Because there's uplifters in life where there's depressors, and you deserve to be uplifted, because what I know about you, even though I don't necessarily know you personally, is that you bring light into people's lives that may not have access to it without you being present, for them to feel the light that you bring into this world. So thank you for shining bright, even when the darkness sometimes wants to swallow you whole. And keep standing strong, because you've got this, and we're stronger because you're in this, and we appreciate you showing up, because truly the inward journey is a lonely one, and we can only ever have our supporters come to the edge of our valley of transformation to cheer us on, and to know that they're there, but nobody can come in there with us. But to know that we can come back and share our experience in a safe space means the world. So thank you for being part of that this evening, and blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. Amazing. Love that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura.